Right guys, welcome back to the second half of our video. This is going to be 1.5. We're not quite ready to do the shell video yet, but it will be very soon. And what we wanted to do first of all was show you our new model, because the game has come out. A lot more detail in this. Devon's done a really good job. And the second thing we want to do, I will pass you on to Mr. Thomas for the rest of it.
Second thing is, in talking to Devin a little bit, he actually showed us a much better way of putting on this bottom lip and prepping the file, and I sort of just want to share that with you now, because it's much better than the way that we were doing it, much faster, much more time efficient. And I'll also show you one of the small bugs with ZBrush, that sometimes people get this bug, sometimes they don't get the bug. If you get the bug, I'll show you how to overcome it. So we have our model, and to begin with, we're going to do what we did with the previous model, which is we want to essentially stretch the base down a bit and then make a lip on that base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the bottle of the model right here. If you don't know any of these zooming or navigation functions, they're in the last tutorial. Let's turn polyframe on, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to B and I'm going to go to Z modeler right here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, and I'm just going to find one of these big polys on the very bottom edge. I'm going to hover my mouse in the middle of the poly. I'm going to hold down spacebar. I'm going to select poly group, and then I'm going to select flat island. Okay, I'm going to hover in the middle of one of those polys. I'm going to left click down with my left mouse button, hold the mouse button down, and then press Alt. And what it'll do is it'll cycle through basically different polygroup color options. They all mean the same thing, but I like to choose a color that is very easily noticeably different from the current color that I'm using. Let's see, that'll do, nice green color. Next thing that I'm going to do is I want to have shaded everything else apart from that bottom polygroup. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift, and you can see I've got this selection tool up in the left hand corner there. You'll see it says Select Rectangle. Okay, so I'm going to hold down Control Shift, get that tool. I'm going to click the main body of the model, and what that's done is that's now disappeared, or it's hidden the bottom polygroup that we just created. Right? Now what I actually want is the opposite of that. So if I hold down Control Shift again and I drag a rectangle outside of the space, it selects the opposite. Then what I want to do is I want to hold down Control, which is the mask tool, and I'm just going to click in the empty space. It's going to mask all of this. I'm going to hold down Control Shift again, and this time I'm just going to click in the empty space, not drag but click. It's going to bring everything back into view. And now, if I hold down Control, the mask tool, and I click, it's going to flip that mask. So now everything that wasn't masked is now masked, and everything that was masked is now not masked, which means that the rest of this model is now masked, apart from the very bottom just there. Now I'm going to go to B. I'm going to go to Transpose. And what it's going to do is it now enables me to move around everything that is unmasked, i.e. this bottom line. Now here's what I didn't do last time, is if I drag it down, you can see that it's dragging all of these polys that are sort of unshaded. That when you mask something, it's not exact. It gives you a sort of a feathered edge. So all of these are within that feathered edge, and you can see that what it's doing is it's creating a rather sort of horrible line. So what I'm actually going to do is Control Z. I'm going to undo that. This time when I drag it down, I'm going to hold down the Control button. And when I hold down the Control button and I drag down, it creates a whole new set of polygroups, just like that. So you can see if I just click on the front there, it's created a whole new group of polygroups, and it's done it a lot more neatly than creating all these horrible artifacts that we had before. Now this is where sometimes it's a bit buggy, right? And what I want you to do is at this point in time turn off the polylines, the polyframe, and I really want you to focus on some of the details, like focus on these nice crisp edges. Now, I know that might look a little bit pixelated to you, but what ZBrush actually does is it pixelates things and makes things a visibly lower resolution so that your computer can cope with what the actual poly frame is. If you want to see a true representation of it, see up here, if you click this BPR, what it does is it's the render tool, and if you click that, it'll actually give you a decent render of what that image is actually supposed to look like. You can see that bar working away. There you go. So this is what this whole model actually looks like realistically. So as soon as I change that view, of course, it's gonna bring it back to being pixelated again. It's going to change the render. At this point in time, I've still got everything masked, so I'm going to hold down Control and I'm just going to drag a square into empty space, and that's going to unmask everything. So, as I said, pay attention to these edges because you'll see what's going to happen in a moment. I'm going to click on the polyframe, and at this point in time, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go to Subtool, and I'm going to duplicate that model right there. Duplicate. There we go. So I've got two of them. I'm going to turn the top one off, so I'm just dealing with one of them, and make sure I've got the bottom one selected. Make sure it's visible. Okay. Right. Let's go back to B and let's go back to Z Modeler. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on one of these bigger polys that are on this bottom line, this bottom extended bit that we've got. I'm going to hold down space, and I am going to select this time extrude, because we want to extrude out the base, and I'm going to go to poly loop, which means basically all the polys in one sequential line. Now, if I hold my mouse over the middle of this big poly here, you will see that depending on where the mouse is, it's creating this orange line going up, to the right, down, and to the left. Okay, so you want to make sure that orange line is either facing left or right, because that's the direction of the poly loop that you want to extrude, which is going left or right all the way around. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my mouse down, and I'm going to basically drag out, and you can see here that what it's doing now is it's creating a base. Now, if you've got a really nice good PC that you're working on, it'll do this a lot faster and a lot smoother than how it is on this one. But anyway, there you go. They've got a base, and you can always drag that out further if you need to. What I'm now going to do is I'm now going to turn the polyframe off. Just like that. Now, can you see that where previously there was nice smooth edges, you've now got all of this sort of rough detail? Okay? And in fact, if I go and I render all of this, you'll see that the detail actually should stay in there. Yeah, there you go. So we don't want that. That's what it's done, is extending that out. This is one of the bugs. If you've got a maybe more up-to-date version of ZBrush, or if you've got a better computer that has a little bit more RAM or is better at rendering, better at just faster in general, you might not come across this. But anyway, I have. So here's the workaround if you get items like this. What you can do is basically replace the model. So we've got our loop on here. What I want to do at this point in time, if you don't have those artifacts, if you've got a perfect model, you can skip this next step. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to go Insert a 3D cube. I'm going to zoom right out. I'm going to make sure that that cube basically envelops the entire of that model. And I'm just going to go to B, T, transpose, and I'm going to drag that cube. Let's look at it from the very front, and let's look down here. I'm going to drag the cube up so that it's just nearly, not quite, but nearly at that base that we've made, the big lip, okay? all of the details of the cowl are that we want to keep are really within that, okay? Then what I want to do is I want to make sure that live boolean up here is turned on, and I want to now subtract it like that. I want to subtract the cube shape from this model here. So that's what I want to keep. When it looks like that, I'm going to go to boolean. I'm going to go to make boolean mesh, and you can see up here now it's making that boolean mesh. And now I'm going to go to insert. Oh, sorry, one thing I need to do before that, and this is the reason why it didn't do that, is because it aborted making the boolean mesh because it detected some errors, okay? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to click back on, I'm going to disappear that, I'm going to click back on this one that I made, and this is the one that has all of those errors, all of those faults in it, okay? And I'm actually going to go to geometry, I'm going to go to modify topology, and I'm actually just going to close holes. There's holes in it, which is why it didn't want to do the boolean. So I'm going to go to close holes, and there you go. Once it's closed the holes, you'll see that there are a lot of little black bits that were previously on here that have now disappeared. I'll just drag back. See all these little small little black bits? They're all tiny holes that are in the poly mesh, and they are not very nice. You can see them here, you can see them, all of these creases. So I'm going to drag forwards in the timeline, that's closed the holes. Right, now I'm going to go back to subtool, I'm going to do that step again. So, let's bring back the cube, let's subtract the cube, that's the shape that we want, and it should now be subtracting it from an item that doesn't have any more holes anymore. Right, okay. Let's go to make boolean mesh, see if it does it properly this time. You can see the bar is now working its way all the way across, which means we're good. Blah, 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 blah. Right, ignore that. So now we can go to insert, we can insert that item, and that's now inserted. So let's now turn off the cube, let's turn off our original. There we go, and you can see there's still some horrible little holes in the back there. So with this item selected, I'm just going to go back to geometry, and I'm going to go to close holes again, and you can see that those holes have disappeared. Fantastic. Now what I'm going to do is go back to subtool on the right hand side. I'm going to bring back my original item. There you go, and the original that we duplicated before we extruded out the base, you can see all the details are still very good and fine. And now what we're going to do is we're going to merge those objects together. So I'll simply drag them right to the bottom of my list. You don't have to do that, but I like to do it. I'm going to click on the one above. I'm going to go to merge. I'm going to go to merge down. So I'm going to merge both of those together. I'm going to click OK, and bickety bam, both of those are now merged. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to delete the other two. Click on that one, delete. Okay, so I've deleted that big square, the cube, and I'm going to go to delete. I'm going to delete that one there. Fantastic. All right. What we now have is a decent master with base, and now from here, of course, I can now start to insert the other items. So I'm going to go to Z plugin. I'm going to go to subtool master. I'm going to go to multi insert, and from here, so I'm going to go to bolts. Okay, there we go. BT transpose, and unlock that. So I'm going to click the bolt. I'm going to unclick. I'm going to home it on and press frame like that. I can see that it's way over there. I'm going to lock it, and then I'm going to click home to bring it back to home. Right, now I'm going to click frame again, and again I'm going to click the front, and I'm going to drag it over here, and you can see that it's orientated going horizontally rather than vertically. So what I'm going to do is hold down shift, and I'm just going to move that so that it's vertical. I'm going to put it down so it's sort of halfway through our base right there. And now what I'm going to do is just give myself a bird's eye view by dragging on this model. There we go. I know it's perfectly bird's eye when I've basically dragged this, and for extra precaution you can click on the top of the head to make sure it's bird's eye view. Then using the white arrow, and I know it's only moving around on the XY axis, not the Z axis. I can start to place that where I want. I can duplicate it. I can move it over to here. I can duplicate it. And I know that as I duplicate these, they are the correct size, making 8mm holes. And the other thing I don't want to do is I don't want to put any directly on the front, the back, or the sides of the shoulders, because that is where the split in the shell is going to be eventually, and making the shell will be in the next tutorial. And I'm probably just going to put one more, I reckon, around there. That should do it nicely. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the very first one that I did. I'm going to go merge down, OK, merge down. I'm just going to click always OK, because I'm going to be doing this quite a few times. There we go, they're all merged into one. So now if I sort of move them, it'll move all of them, as you can see. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to geometry. I'm going to go to mirror and weld. I know a lot of this was in our last tutorial, but obviously now that I've changed the file, I've got to do it again. So just a little recap. And now what I want to do is I want to subtract that item. So I'm going to subtract it. There we go. And with it subtracted, I then want to make the boolean. So I'm going to go to boolean. I'm going to go to make boolean mesh. You can see it's going to work its way along, and once it's made the boolean mesh, I can then insert it. There we go, fantastic, insert, and there we go. Now I can remove from sight the other two, just turn those subtools off from being visible. Fantastic. And then the last thing to do is to put in the keys, where the shell will key into place to make sure it doesn't move too much. So I'm going to put in this sphere, and I'm just going to drag it down and forwards. I'm going to make it a lot smaller, just like so. Right, I'm going to zoom right in here. Let's put it so it's, see how far away it is. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a front-on view, and I'm actually going to, I quite like it when it's stretched up a little bit. I'm going to make it a bit smaller so that it, so this is sort of perfect. What I like with the key is when it's buried below the surface, it's more than halfway submerged, and it doesn't poke out the bottom. So this is kind of perfect right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it into the object right there. And that is pretty perfect placement, I think, for a key. That's what I like. All right, so now I'm going to click on the top of the head again, make sure that it is bird's eye view, and then again I'm going to duplicate. Now I want to avoid going in here because that's where the shell split is going to be, so I want to put one in there, duplicate, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top one again, and I'm going to merge down. So I'm going to go merge, merge down, merge down, merge down, merge down. Fantastic. And then I'm going to, with those all merged, go to geometry, modify topology, and I'm going to mirror and weld. Mirror and weld. Fantastic. I'm going to go back up to subtools, and I'm now going to take that and I'm going to merge down. Merge down. There you go. Fantastic. Now, as I was doing that, I've just noticed that I think some of those pishky holes have appeared back there on the back of this base. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fix that. So let me look all the way around here a second. Yeah, just a couple of horrible little holes on the back here. So again, fix that very easily by going down to geometry, close holes, It's working to close all the holes, and there you go, that's holes closed. And let's just zoom in, make sure all the details are still very nice, all the texture's still there, everything's looking very nice. If I was to click render for a second, make everything look gorgeous, lovely, looking very crisp, everything's how I want it to be. Alright, so this is now our master. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to Subtool, I'm going to click it, and I'm going to click rename, and I'm just going to call it KTJL Kill the Justice League Master 23 inch. Enter. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go to, with it selected and nothing else selected, I'm going to go to export, and I'm just basically going to save it as an OBJ, save it wherever I want it, ready for printing. Alright, moving on to printing, next stage.